It's been 6 months since my last video talking about how to gain Certs in Planetside 2. I consider myself somewhat of an expert on gaining Certs. I've gained a lot in the past from various different farming methods, and I kind of wanted to talk about some of those in this game today. Now, there are some easy ones like playing Medic, generally reviving people, getting Bandolier on that Medic, and playing in large fights generally will be the fastest way to get Certs. Even if you're like a salty vet, generally even still, like getting Certs via revives and then also getting a few kills on top usually is the best way. So flat off, that is the best way. But there's also a bunch of different other alternatives that are arguably similar in terms of speed, especially in certain contexts. One of them, interestingly enough, is I would argue Courtium farming on the off continent, so that is the unpopulated continent, is actually pretty good Cert farm. So if you did want to like play a little bit more relaxed for an hour or two, like some people like to play Elite Dangerous, people like to play Euro Truck Simulator, so people like that really enjoy playing those more relaxed games definitely would benefit from basically going on the off continent, getting an ant, placing the silo down, and getting those 36,000 Courtium nodes farmed up, then moving on to the next one. And just repeating that process can arguably get you, I'd say especially if you make a new account, you can easily get about 1,000 Certs in 15 minutes, which I know sounds like a crazy claim, but even without double XP, that's very much possible. And then obviously as you gain levels, that amount does decrease, but especially if like you're making a new account, that can be a nice way to do it if you just want to do something and nobody's online, for example. That's one way to do things. Here's another surprising one. If you're decent at reading a map and like you can tell like where the opposition's likely going to be on the map, you can ask an outfit leader, hey, do you mind if I pull a bastion like at 9 o'clock today or 7 o'clock today or whenever we next have one, or at some point? And usually they'll say yes, usually, especially if you ask nicely, right? So feel free to do that, and like basically you can get 150, 200 kills in a bastion, which is usually a pretty decent farm. You might get a few thousand Certs from that, to be honest, especially if it's double XP, right? So if it's, I think on the end of each month, you can get double XP if you're a member. So I'd definitely recommend doing that if you've got the spare income. Like membership's actually pretty useful. On top of that double XP, you also get extra nanites per minute, which basically allows you to pull more vehicles, and more maxes, which is a force multiplier, and that in turn allows you to get more kills, right? So I would definitely consider membership for that reason, to get Certs as well. Another way to get Certs, as I kind of alluded to there, is playing in force multipliers. Definitely one good example of that is maxes specifically. Blue shift maxes and Marcy's on TR and scat maxes on NC are really strong because of their high health pool and high damage. So if we kind of use those in large fights that you know, especially if they're going to last and they're like long drawn out fights, every time you get to like 500 HP, play like pretty conservative, just go back and get an engineer to revive you up, and like you can get a lot of Certs just doing that farm. So that's another way to consider playing if you enjoy that kind of stuff. I have also heard some people say that killing vehicles generally is decent at getting Certs, especially consistently over time. And so if you did want to play in the Prowler, the Mag Rider, and the Harasser, those are 3 ways in which you can play the game and have a bunch of fun at the same time. Another one that you can use if you do want to gain a bunch of Certs is you can get a high kills per minute, which does involve a little bit of time investment in terms of learning some of the Planetside unique mechanics in order to kind of abuse the system in order to farm up a high KPM. One of the things you're going to want to do is get a facility module on any base that you're spawning a Valkyrie from, on top of having ideally an ASP rank light ESF discount or a Valkyrie discount, and that will make pulling Valkyries basically free, especially if you've got membership as well. So you can basically like farm up a 2 kpm even if you just have like 2 KD like pretty easily. So that's like another way to play the game if you're like decent at infantry. But again, that takes a bit of like learning to do, and you got to switch to heavy assault. It's a lot to do with like making sure you're aiming at the head and that you're like very relaxed when you're shooting at people and you're not like being like fight or flight, and you're just again being very calm, and also like strafing and a bunch of other stuff like map awareness. So it's a bit more of a hard skill, but long term getting good at the game definitely is probably the most reliable way to get Certs, unless of course you want to play medic all the time, which some people really enjoy doing. And if you want to play an ops as well, I would say that's also a good way to get Certs, especially as a medic, because you're going to be getting a lot of revives relative to normal. Even in like Zagi fights of 96 players, you might not get as many revives as you do playing ops with an outfit. So you may want to play ops for that reason too. Now there's some that I don't recommend. So for example, Scout Radar, I used to do quite a lot, and I also tried, there was this person I think called Anna Ryexia, and she, I believe, would go on a Valkyrie like all day every day and just scout radar. And I talked to that person quite extensively about how much Certs they were getting an hour, and I believe that scout radar is not worth it purely from a Cert game perspective. Likewise, leading squads and platoons probably isn't worth it right now, just gonna be honest. The leadership ribbons that you get is not high enough in terms of rewards. Pulling Sundays and trying to play logistics, generally speaking, is too much of a Cert drain to be considered worthwhile. Although I will say that if you already have a good Sunday unlocked, so that's either specifically a shield Sunday or an invisible Sunday, both work well for different reasons. Those can be good options if you do want to gain some Certs, but it might take you 10-15 hours to recoup the investment that you've put into the Sunday to then start seeing in return on investment on that initial Cert cost. Another one that I tried out personally just to like kind of like see how good it is, and it's something I used to do a lot like when I was a super big noob 2 years ago. I would try to like give people ammo, especially in like biolabs and stuff, but to be honest, it's really not that fast of Certs. I wouldn't consider it worth it at all. At that point, you may as well just go do some Cortium farming, right? One other thing that I didn't mention here so far is that if you play alerts, especially all the way to the end, you generally will get a decent amount of Certs. And you'll also get ISO, and ISO cost about twice as much as Certs do in order to get. So for every 2 ISO, you get like 4 Certs. So it's a very strong thing to play alerts, specifically for that reason. And you also want to be very careful with spending your ISO because it is actually a very time intensive thing to do. Now another thing that you can do, which actually is maybe one of the more passive things, is specifically doing missions. You get more missions when you're a member, by the way, and you can also accept more when you're a member. But specifically missions are good because you can just like, especially the kill someone with a bounty is usually a good one to go for. And if you have 5000 A7, then I think you automatically get ISO instead of A7, I believe. And so for that reason, getting 5000 A7 is a good idea, and then keeping that 5000 A7, even if you think you might want to try out another gun with A7, just wouldn't recommend it. Instead, save up that ISO from the missions. Super good thing to try out. And of course, there's some other missions which are like relatively easy, like platoon leadership mission can be easy if you know how to lead a platoon with any degree of competency, which to be fair isn't super difficult. And I do have guides on, if you're interested in that, you can search it. Another really good thing for Cert gain is actually just not spending them. Like being careful of what you spend your Certs on. Like realistically, there's a lot of things that people spend Certs on that they end up not using. So just make sure you're spending your Certs on things that people generally use in normal Planetside gameplay. So for example, halberd on your secondary gun for vehicles. You got things like flak or bandolier for medic, and for heavy you may want to get flak as well. So there's a few things there that you can definitely be sure are a good idea to unlock. Likewise, a one-time scope on your guns is a good idea. Grip is always a good idea. And also soft point ammunition is a good idea as well, so definitely think about that. Now I would be interested to hear, does anyone have any other ideas on how to gain Certs specifically in Planetside 2? I'd also love to hear what everyone else's thoughts are on this topic. And if you have watched all of this video, you very much likely would benefit from subscribing to the channel, because I've released Planetside content once every few days, so definitely would be a good idea. So subscribe to the channel, comment in the video, and if you would like to like the video, feel free. Until next time, have a wonderful day. I'm out. GG.